Now, when you launch Photoshop CC 2020 for the first time, you would notice certain changes that have been made to the product, alright, right away in your face. So, let me quickly show it to you. So, you can see when we open Photoshop CC 2020 for the first time and we select the home button, home tab, home section over here, check out the option on the right hand side, alright, this particular panel. Check out what's new. How cool is that? In-app tutorials for the new features. So almost all the Adobe products, including the Creative Cloud app, now support in-app learning resources for the new features or in-app tutorials. So if I just go ahead and click view details, you can see it launches an in-app window where I can quickly go through all these options on the left hand side. Alright, these are the new features in Photoshop CC 2020. So I can just click next to toggle to move through these. Alright, so I'm just going to click close for now. Also, if I click Ctrl N on my keyboard or Command N on Mac, you can see the new document dialog box pops up right away. Alright, earlier it would take a couple of seconds, now it loads almost instantly. So this is another enhancement that's been made in Photoshop CC 2020. And let me show you if another thing. If I let's open one of the recent documents over here. So I'll open this image file over here, and right away you can see we have a learn panel over here. All right. So let me just drag it and make it a flotilla. So we have a learn panel, and I can expand it. It's an in-app tutorial. I can go through these. Alright, so there's a Photoshop tour. If I click it, you can see it launches a Photoshop tour for me right within the Photoshop app. Now how cool, how classy is that? Alright, some really cutting edge stuff that will blow your mind. So you can just go through these, keep clicking next. Alright, back, next, next. You can click all projects if you want. And then again, Photoshop will give you some pointers over here. So what happens when you click on the eye icon next to the room layer? So let's eyeball it, and you can see over here it takes me, so it's very much interactive, it takes me to the next step. Alright, so this is pretty cool stuff. I'm just going to click cross for now. I'm going to close the panel. So this is the learn panel, and also you can go to the settings, Control K I'm going to press on my keyboard, and you can enable auto show the home screen. Alright, so every time I want to see the home screen, I don't have to select it manually. Alright, there's a setting for that. There's in the general preferences, just go ahead and select it. So check enable this guy here, auto show the home screen. So really some really cool enhancements, especially the new features tutorials, the resources on learning the new what are new updates in different Adobe products. So this functionality has been incorporated across all the Adobe applications as well as the Creative Cloud app. Alright, so fab work Adobe over there. This is really cool, and it will blow your mind. Alright, you don't have to visit launch a browser or visit some other website to learn more about the new features of the product. Alright. Now, another new feature in the Photoshop CC 2020 is the object selection tool. Now, of all the new features in this version, in the 2019 version, in fact in the last 3-4 years, object selection remains as one of my most favorite tools. Alright, it's like for people like us, old schoolers who've been working on Photoshop for quite some time, if we had to select an object, we had to go to channels or use color range or use the pen tool, alright, or advanced masking techniques. But with object selection, the technology under the hood is Adobe Sensei, which is basically their artificial intelligence, wherein Photoshop can identify a subject within an image and select it for you. Now how cool is that? That's cutting edge stuff. Alright, so all you need to do is click select image on the options panel, and Photoshop will do it for you. It will select the subject, give it to you. You want it, you just want a selection, you get it. You want it masked, you will get it, and then you can compose it anywhere you want on a new background. Alright, so some really fascinating stuff, and one of my personal favorite features. Alright, it was introduced in the last version, but now they have enhanced it, so you will get pixel perfect selections. Alright, now obviously if you're looking to mask here, then you cannot expect it to do the business for you. Alright, you would have to make some selections yourself in the channels, but then again object selection will do much of the heavy lifting for you. Alright, almost it will take you almost 98 to 99% there. Let me show you how it works. Alright, so object selection is the fourth tool in the tools panel. Alright, it's nested in our old friend magic wand and quick selection tool. So you can see I have a pigeon. Now this is obviously the subject in the image. Now this is a high contrasting image. We have a light background against the dark subject, so it's easy to select the subject over here. Alright, so let me show you how it works. I'm going to hit W on my keyboard or select the fourth option, object selection tool over here. Alright, and I'm going to click select subject on the options panel. The moment I do that, Photoshop is going to do the magic, and you can see this is quite a magic. Alright, this is fascinating stuff. This is fab. It has selected the object for me. It has selected the subject for me. I can, if I want, I can always mask it, compose it in a new background. Alright, I'm going to hit Ctrl Z on my keyboard to undo this. And let me show you another example of the tool. Over here you can see it's a little complex image. Alright, so let's see, let's try out the same technique and see if Photoshop can select the bird for us. Alright, so let's see if Sensei is smart enough to distinguish between the bird and the branches of this tree and give us a selection. Now ideally, even I mean we can understand that the subject is a bird, but for an artificial intelligence to distinguish between a tree and a bird, and then again what is the subject for you, it's going to be a little tricky. Alright, so what it does is it looks at the pixels and then tries to do its stuff, identify what is subject, what is the background, what is the foreground, and then what is the subject. So I'll just go ahead and click select subject over here, and well, I just want to select the bird, but you can see it has done a pretty decent job of not selecting the background. It has selected the branches for me, the tree branches, as well as the bird. Now this is something that I don't want, so I'm going to hit Ctrl D to deselect. That would be Command D on Mac, and now I'm just going to shift drag around the bird, and you can see while I'm doing it, I can hold down the space bar on my keyboard to move around this selection, the marching ants, and reposition my selection over here. And yeah, that's it. I'm going to leave the left button from my mouse, and you can see it has done a pretty decent job. Alright, if I just zoom in, you can see some portion of the tree branch has been selected. I can hold down the Alt key, and you can see next to my cursor there's a minus sign. Alright, it's a visual indicator of subtracting from the existing selection. So I'm going to deselect from the selection, subtract from the selection. You can see, keep an eye on the marching ants, and you can see I have removed from selection. Now I can also see some stuff over here, some portion of wood I would like to deselect from here as well. And yeah. Alright, so this is pretty good. If I want, I can hold down the shift key, add some part of the skin over here. No, for that I think I would have to go with the shift, with the pen tool or a channel tool. But it has done pretty much for me. Alright, so it's much of the heavy lifting has already been done over here, you can see. And yep, I can go ahead and mask it. And if I want, I can come back over here. Alright, so I forgot to remove this, so I can maybe hit the brush tool, remove, use the bracket keys to reduce the size, and I'm just going to paint with the brush tool over here quickly. Yep, yep, and like so. I can further reduce the brush tool by pressing the bracket keys, and I'm gonna paint over the area that I don't need. So yep, this looks fine. There is some color fringing going on, but then again that is beyond the scope of this example. Alright, I'm just covering a feature over here. So this is not a lecture on channels and masking. For that I would suggest you refer to Dick McLean's Channels and Masking. Alright, that is the Bible on channels and masking. For any photographer, you want to learn something about selecting here, alright, then Photoshop channels and masking, Photoshop CS3 and CS4. In fact, that is what is the best resource as per me on channels and masking. Anyhow, let me take you through some quickly through some other examples over here. So you can see we have 3 objects over here. Let's again go ahead and click. Let me just first of all hit V on my keyboard to select the move tool. And now I'm going to hit W to select the object selection tool. I'm going to click select subject from the options panel, options bar, and you can see it has selected all the 3 subjects for me. I'm going to hit Ctrl D to deselect, and I'm going to drag around Gautam Buddha over here. Alright, I want the Buddha statue to be selected, and you can see it's done a pretty decent job once again. Now what if I want to select the other object over here as well? I'm going to hold down the shift key, and while I do that you can see there is a plus sign next to my cursor. Alright, I'm going to drag around, and you can see we are adding to the selection. How cool is that? Alright, so I'm not using quick selection, I'm using object selection tool over here. Alright, with quick selection it would have taken at least 5 to 6 clicks for me. Alright, and then again some adding and reducing from that, removing from that. So you can see it's doing a pretty decent job over here. Now I'm again going to hit Ctrl D to deselect, and let me show you another option over here. When in object selection tool, go ahead and click select and mask. Now this option was always there earlier. This dialog box, it used to be called refine edge. Alright, and it was pretty decent functionality, pretty decent tool, but now Adobe has taken it to a next level. Alright, so while you could always use the paintbrush tool to deselect or select the regions that you wanted in your mask, now we also have object selection tool which can be accessed from this panel. Alright, and I can just, first of all I'll select the view that best matches my requirement. I can select the normal view, that is marching ants, or I can go with Ruby Lith overlay, alright, or onion skin, or black and white. I'm going to go with onion skin over here, and let me just go ahead and look at the reduce the transparency, and I'm going to marquee drag around the bulb to select it. Alright, and let's see if Photoshop can select it for me, and you can see it has selected Gautam Buddha for me. Alright, so instead of playing around with the brush tool and selecting the regions that I wanted in the masks, deselecting the regions that I didn't want in the mask, alright, I can just play around with the selection tool, basically object selection tool. I'm going to click OK to commit the changes, and you can see not only Photoshop selects Gautam Buddha for me, it also masks it. So it has created a layer mask, and if I hold down the shift key, you can see we have the entire image over here, but when I enable the mask, you can see Gautam Buddha has been selected. Alright, so it has created a mask, applied it. This is non-destructive way of working in Adobe Photoshop. Alright, rather than cutting the image, pasting it on a new layer, or jumping the image to a new layer, always work with masks. Alright, so some fascinating stuff. Let's move over to another example, another application of this technology. So again, I'm going to click select subject when in object selection mode, and let's see what happens. And awesome, fab. So you can see it has selected the bird for me. Alright, I don't need to do anything. I can just go ahead and click the mask button over here. Alright, and yep, pretty good. Likewise, if I go to, we have 2 more examples over here. You can use it for product photography as well. Alright, so let's see, let's go ahead and select subject, and you can see it has selected both the subjects for me. Alright, I don't want that. What if I just wanted to select the smaller friend over here? I'm just going to marquee drag around it, and you can see it has selected it for me. Alright, so pretty decent, pretty cool stuff. So I can create a mask, and yes, we have it. Alright, so pretty fascinating stuff. So this is object selection on steroids, new, enhanced, improved object selection for you. Alright, and then again, don't forget to leverage select and mask, and you can always select portions of an object. Alright, in the 2019 version of Photoshop, while you could, the object selection tool was always there and you could always select the subjects, but then with the 2020 release, the difference is from the subject you can choose a certain area, alright, or certain objects or elements from the image. Alright, you don't suppose there are just like this example, there are two monkeys or two toys. Alright, so both are subjects over here. So if you were working in 2019, it would. Now another of those enhancements that have been made to Photoshop CC 2020, one such is the enhancement made to the content aware dialog box. Now some of you may be wondering, content aware dialog box, what is that? Well, with the Photoshop CC 2019 release, content aware was not just a menu command, it had its dedicated workspace, dedicated dialog box, and a lot of options to play around with. With the 2020 release, they have taken it a step ahead, and now we have 3 sampling options. Alright, so it gives you that much more creative freedom and liberty to sample the pixels from, alright, and replace them in your current selection. Let me show you how that works. So over here you can see I have an image. It was captured from a moving bus. So we have a reflection of the window which is being cast in the image itself. What if I want to remove this reflection? The first thing I would do is select the polygon lasso tool and start selecting the region that I want to be replaced. Alright, I'm going to hit escape and select again because this is the region that I want Photoshop to consider for sampling pixels to remove and replace the selection with. So this looks about fine to me, and yep. So we have a selection. Now my goal is I want Photoshop to sample pixels that are similar to the sky and replace the windows, the reflection of windows with those pixels. Alright. So for this, ideally I'll go to the edit menu, and from edit menu I'll select content aware fill. Now when I do that, you can see we have a preview window where we would see the results in real time. Let me go ahead and click auto. You can see in the sampling area options we have 3 options to choose from now. Earlier it was just rectangular, which was the default behavior. Now we have auto. If I select auto, Photoshop would look at the nearby pixels which are similar to the pixels in the selection, and then it would automatically replace the pixels in the selection with these nearby pixels that have been sampled. So whatever green you are seeing in this image over here, these are the sampled pixels. Alright, so they have been automatically sampled by Photoshop, and these are similar to the pixels in the selection. So let's go ahead and select rectangular now. Now in the rectangular, usually Photoshop creates a rectangle around the selection and then samples pixels from there. So you can see right now it's sampling almost the entire image for me. So rectangular is not working out the way it should, alright, at least in this case. Now anyhow, if I want, I can always paint away from the sampling area. Alright, everything which is highlighted in green is being sampled, considered by Photoshop to replace the selection with. Alright, so I'm going to hold down the Alt key, and you can see the plus sign changes to minus. That means I'm going to remove or paint away the pixels that I don't want to be sampled or considered by Photoshop. alright, while replacing the selected region or area. So let me go ahead and paint away the objects that should not be sampled. Now you can always play around with the brush size by hitting the parentheses or bracket keys, left and right bracket keys. So let me hold down the Alt key once again. And by the way, if you want, you can also click the minus button over here. That is remove from sampled region. Alright, it will remove or minus or paint away the pixels that I don't want to be considered. So let's consider, let me just switch back to add to selection, add to the sampling. So now we are sampling these pixels. This is fine, and yeah, looks about fine to me. So you can see over here, now it's done a pretty decent job. You can also select the third option over here, custom, alright, wherein you would be required to paint in from scratch. Alright, so let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to increase the brush size by hitting the right parenthesis or bracket key. And I'm going to paint around these regions like so. Yep. Alright, so just I'll go ahead and make a random paint, and then I'm going to remove from the selection. So now I'll hit the Alt key, reduce my brush size. I'll press the Alt key on my keyboard, that would be option on Mac, and I would start painting the regions that I don't want to be sampled or basically considered by Photoshop to replace my selected pixels with. So yeah, that is fine. Let's remove this also, and let's remove some pixels from here, this guy here, and some pixels from this spot. And I'll add pixels from here. Let's see the result over here. So you can see Photoshop is taking some time over here. Meanwhile, if you want, you can also change the color adaptation setting. Alright, like right now we have selected default. I can select high or very high as well. Now keep in mind, when you select high or very high, it will consume some memory and may take some time. Now this looks about fine to me. I want the output on a new separated layer. Alright, that is always the non-destructive way of working in Photoshop. And I'm going to click OK. So you can see, let me hit Ctrl D on my keyboard to deselect. You can see now the reflection from windows has been completely removed. Alright, there are a bit of pieces here and there which were not selected by me, so I can always remove them using the clone stamp or healing brush. Anyhow, so this was before and this is after. Alright, you can see we have the new replaced pixels on a new dedicated layer. So we have not harmed a single pixel in the source image. So three new options, three new sampling options in the content available dialog box. Now another new functionality, or rather I would say enhancement, that has been made to Photoshop CC 2020 is to the transform tool, transform behavior. Now those of you who have been using the transform functionality, and I cannot conceive of anyone who doesn't use it in Photoshop. Since the Stone Age version, how would you transform a raster or a vector graphic? You would hold down the shift key on your keyboard and then start dragging from one of the corners of the object, alright, be it raster, vector or a smart object. Now what would they do? That would basically scale or transform the object proportionately, alright, while maintaining the aspect ratio of the object. Now for some reasons, and I don't know what were the reasons, Adobe in their 2019 release of Photoshop made some changes to this functionality which were not very well received within the creative community. Now these changes were inconsistent, and basically, while you could still hold down the shift key to scale the vector objects proportionately, but when it came to the raster object, alright, the continuous stone images, you could scale them up proportionately without having to hold down the shift key, alright. In fact, if you did press the shift button and scaled the raster graphics, it would scale them disproportionately. In a nutshell, it would distort them. So this was a very inconsistent behavior, alright? And moreover, it didn't work on the smart objects either. So this behavior has not only been fixed in Photoshop CC 2020, in fact, they have made some really cool enhancements to the functionality. Let me show you. So basically, I'll just switch back to Photoshop, and over here you can see, just have a look at the layers panel. I have three layers. One is basically the image, the second is the composite of this ship and below the harbor bridge, and then we have a text layer. Now if I press, if you are working in the earlier versions of Adobe Photoshop, if you hold down the Control T and wanted to scale the vector, or for that matter even raster graphics proportionately, you could just hold down the shift key and start dragging from one of the corner handles, and you can see it's scaling the graphic proportionately while maintaining the aspect ratio. Alright, I can hit the tick mark on the options bar to commit the changes. Now I'll again press Ctrl T on my keyboard, and this time around you can look at my hand. I'm not pressing the shift key, and if I start scaling it from one of the corner handles, see what it does? It distorts the layer, the raster layer, the object. Alright, it's not maintaining the proportions, that is the width and the height. So again, if I press the shift key, it works perfectly fine, like a charm. So now what Adobe has done is, if you look at the options bar, and this guy here, the chain button, the link button, or the maintain aspect ratio button, whatever you want to call it, alright, if you click it, it works as a toggle. Alright, so now see the magic. I have my hand over here, I'm not pressing the shift key, and now when I'm scaling, it's scaling proportionately. Alright, so I don't need to press the shift key, and by the way, this is the default behavior. Alright, so you can scale up raster, vector, or smart objects in Photoshop CC 2020 without having to press the shift key, and it would maintain the aspect ratio, it would maintain the proportions. Alright, so I'm just going to go ahead and commit the changes by clicking this tick button on the options bar. Now this is basically a toggle. Alright, so you can see I have this link button turned on, and it's scaling it proportionately. My hand is up. Now if I switch it off, it's distorting it. It's not scaling it proportionately anymore. Alright, and if I hold down the shift key, let's say I want a old functionality, I can just hold down the shift key and see, now it's working perfectly fine. Right, now for some reason, let's say, and it would make a lot of sense for those of you who are very used to the shift key, what you can do is just visit the preferences, and you can always roll back to the earlier setting. Alright, so for that I'm going to hold down the Control K on my keyboard, that's Command K on Mac, and in the general preferences, in the options segment, you can see we have this option, use legacy free transform. I'm going to make sure it's check enabled, and I'm going to click OK to commit the changes. Alright, so now I can always hold down the shift key, and I can scale up the objects proportionately. Now one thing you need to keep in mind in Photoshop CC 2020, the transform settings. Alright, this guy here, the maintain aspect ratio button, this is a sticky setting. Alright, so it's a global setting. If I were to enable it, alright, and then close this window, the next image that I open, it will remember this setting and apply it on the subsequent transformations. So you have to keep that one in mind. Alright, so good work Adobe there. This is an amazing functionality, makes the life much more easy. Alright, now let's move on to the next feature. Next, we move on to smart objects. With Photoshop CC 2020, Adobe has added the ability to convert the smart object back to the layers. Alright, and then again, if you want to have smart filters applied to these layers or not is completely your choice. So earlier there were multiple steps involved. You had to open a smart object in a new document and then move the layers back to the original or the source document. Alright, it was a long workflow, long process. Now it is much simplified. Let me show you how. So over here you can see we have the layers panel over here. So I'm just going to hold down the shift key. Let me just unlock this one first. And let me just select these layers. And I'm going to right click these layers. And from right click context menu, I'm going to convert them to a smart object. Alright. So you can see the layers have now been converted to a smart object. If I double click the smart object, it will open in a new document. And in the new document, I have access to all the layers. Now, if I wanted to move these layers back or get these layers back over here, the only way of doing it was to double click the smart object to open it as a new document in a new tab or a new window, and then paste these layers or move these layers back to the source document over here. But with, let me just go ahead and close this for now. But with Photoshop CC 2020, now we have the ability to move these back to the layers. Alright, it would create a layer group, smart object layer group, and move the layers in that layer group. Let me show you how that works. I'm going to right click this smart object layer, and from here you can see we have few options over here. Alright, some of these are new. I can convert the smart object to layers. Alright, we can also get this option by going to the layer menu on top, and from there go to the smart objects, and from the smart objects menu you will find the option over here as well. Alright, so convert to layers. Let's see, I think we also have the option in the properties panel for this. We can convert it to different layers. Alright, so we have the option to convert to layers here as well. So I'm going to go ahead and do it. And you can see Photoshop has created a group, basically a folder for the smart object. And from this folder, all the layers are there, completely intact and all their glory. Alright, so amazing feature, a lot of time saver, a big time saver for people who are completely working in smart objects. And mind you, smart object is the way of working in Photoshop, has been the best suggested practice for quite some time now. It's non-destructive way of working. You do not harm your pixels when you're working in smart objects. So I cannot emphasize enough on using smart objects in your designs or in your photographs. So another option in the properties panel are the alignment and distribution options. Now you always had access to alignment and distribution commands on the options panel over here, but now with the properties panel you don't have to go to options bar every time you select an object, a raster object that is. Alright, so these commands, if you want to align a text, you still have to use those distribution and alignment options available on the options bar. But for the, at least for the raster objects, you can always select them over here. So for example, let me just go ahead and click this web icon over here. Alright, and let's say I want to align it with Sydney, the left edge of the Sydney. So for that, what I'm going to do is hit M on my keyboard to invoke the marquee selection tool, and I'm just going to go ahead and draw a marquee over here. Now I can hold down the space bar while dragging, so I can adjust my selection over here. I'll make sure I have selected it properly. Now see what I'm going to do. I have the web layer selected over here. I'll hit V to select, to switch to move tool, and now I'm just going to make sure that in the properties, in the align and distribute section, I have selection highlighted in the align to drop down menu. Alright, from align to drop down menu you have two options, canvas and selection. If you select canvas, the object is going to move in relation to the entire image or the canvas size. Alright, but if you select this guy over here, selection, then the elements are going to reposition or move according to the currently selected object or selection that you have made on the canvas. So I'll make sure selection is there selected in the align to drop down menu, and I'm going to left align it, and you can see this has now docked to the left edge of my current selection. Alright, I'm going to hit Ctrl D on my keyboard to deselect it. That would be Command D on Mac. Now let's say I want to bottom align all these icons over here. So I'll shift click all these icons. And now I'm going to simply go ahead and click bottom click. And you can see they are all properly aligned. Alright. Now if I want, I can always press and hold the down arrow key to nudge them. Again, I may have to play around with the text over here. So let's say, let me just move around these icons properly. Let me just shift them, align them properly over here. Yeah, with the arrow keys. But you can see the alignment has been done properly. So this is basically how you can play around with the align and distribute commands over here. Alright, you can left align them, center align them. If you want, you can distribute them equally. So let me show you how that works. Let me just go ahead and click these. And now if I want, I can horizontally distribute them to the horizontal centers like so. Alright, so now these icons are distributed to their horizontal centers. So I can just select this text layer and reposition it like so. Alright. Similarly, I'll select this text layer and reposition this as well. Perfect. So, but what I have seen is another, this is more like a feature request that I'm making with Adobe, that though these options are available on the raster layers or pixel based layers, the alignment options are not available in the properties section. Alright, so alignment and distribution options should also be available for the text or vector layers in the properties panel. So who knows, maybe in the next upgrade, it's a constantly upgrading process with Creative Cloud, so maybe in the next minor upgrade they may come up with the alignment options in the properties panel as well for text layers. Now another interesting, and I should say more time effective power packed enhancements that have been made are to the properties panel of Photoshop CC 2020, and you will understand the moment I show it to you. But before that, I would ask you a very fundamental question. What would be the first thing you would do if you want to find out more information about a particular layer that you have selected? Alright, it can be a text layer, it can be a vector layer, it can be a raster layer, it can be a smart object. Which panel would you select in Photoshop? The first thing you would do is you would go to the properties panel, right? Now in Photoshop CC 2020, Adobe has made certain very power packed enhancements to this panel. Not only can you find information about a particular layer that you have selected, there are certain contextually relevant enhancements that have been made, contextually sensitive operations that have been added, depending upon the type of layer you have selected or the type of tool you have selected. Alright, so these are some of the common tasks, or you can say some of the most common steps creative professionals take depending upon the type of layer or depending upon the type of tool that they have selected. Let me show you what I mean. Alright, so over here you can see, let's come back to the old image. I have made some changes to it, and you can see we have some layer groups over here. Then we have some text layers and we have some raster layers or pixel layers, sorry. So over here, let's go ahead and select the text layer. So I've selected Harbor Bridge text layer over here, and I'm going to expand the properties panel. Now if you cannot find it docked in one of your panels or palettes over here, go to the Windows menu and you can select it from here. Now first thing you would notice is we have some transform options over here. So if I want, I can transform the text. Alright, I can click this chain or link button over here to transform the text proportionately. Alright, at the same time, let me just go ahead and shrink it. We have access to character and paragraph panels as well. Alright, so this is something I'm sure every InDesign user would love. Alright, this is basically these are the options we spend most of our time on if we are working in Adobe InDesign. Alright, so not only are we able to get more information about the text layer, we are actually able to change the text in real time from the properties panel itself. Most of the contextually relevant and sensitive options are available right there in the properties panel. I have no need to go to the Windows menu and look for the properties or characters panel over here. Alright, so if I want to, let's say, change the font, I can simply click the font menu, and from the drop down menu I can select any font of my choice. Alright, now you would say first thing that what kind of a choice is that? Well, this is just for the demo purposes. This is the last font I will be selecting in my life. Alright, I am never going to use that font in a professional design. Anyhow, so you get the idea. Now you can also play around with the leading, kerning, cracking options. Then again, there are some extra options as well. You can change the font color. Alright, so I'm not going to get into those. Instead, let's go to the paragraph menu. Now there are some paragraph justification settings. So you can left align, right align, center align. You can justify the font. In fact, this would be more applicable in cases of paragraphs and not the character. Then again, you can change the case. So right now it's all caps. I can change it to small caps. I can change it to superscript, subscript. Alright, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to undo the changes. Roll back to all caps. And this is what I was talking about. Quick actions. So these are contextually relevant and contextually sensitive actions. These are the actions that creative professionals take on a day-by-day basis. These are the most frequent actions when you take when you're working on a text layer. Alright, so most often when you want to play around with a font, you want to make some personalized changes to the font, you would convert it to a shape and then play with the anchor points, right? So right now I can straight away from the properties panel itself convert the text to a shape, and you can see we now have access to the anchor points over here. Let me go ahead and zoom in, and you can see we now have the access to the anchor points. We can play around with them. Alright, so if I, let's say, if I select E over here, alright, and I'll use the arrow keys, and you can see I'm making changes to the font over here. Alright, now this is not a font anymore, it's lost its font attributes and properties, it's converted to a shape, but I can tweak the shape to my liking. So very interesting, and some really cool enhancements being made to the properties panel. Then again, you can make certain changes if you have raster or a pixel based layer selected. The options would change accordingly. So transform options more or less remain the same. Alright, so let me just go ahead and hide the bottom layers, and let me show you the transform options. First of all, you can rotate the image from here. So let's go ahead and rotate it 90 degrees. Alright, so let me just undo this, and then again you can zoom in and zoom out the image, transform the image, scale it up or down the way you want. Alright, so let me just go ahead and undo this also. Then again, there are some alignment options, so you have those on the options bar as well, but now you have them in the properties panel as well. Alright, there are align options, there are distribute options. I'll just come to them in a while. Then we have quick actions. Now this is something that I really love. Alright, so we have seen select subject, and then we have remove background. Both the options are nested in the quick actions drop down menu within the properties panel. Now you know the technology under the hood. This is Adobe Sensei, their artificial intelligence. So Adobe can identify what is the background, what is the subject, and depending upon the command you are using, it can select the subject for you or it can remove the background for you. Alright, and it does a pretty decent job. At least I have seen personally 95 to 96%. Much of the heavy lifting is done by Adobe. So let me show you how that works. I'm going to eyeball the layer below the harbor bridge to make it visible, and now I'm going to click remove background with the harbor bridge layer selected. So Adobe is going to run the algorithm in the background, and you can see now my image has been masked in real time and composited to the underlying background. Alright, so this is what we call as non-destructive editing. Not a single pixel has been harmed in the process. We do have the mask over here. If I want to reveal something, I can play around with the mask. Alright, I can hide, I can reveal. Alright, so this is, you can see it's a non-destructive way of working. So I'm creating a mask over here. And let's look at the quality of the mask or cutout that has been created. So first thing you would do is look at the hair, and you can see it has done a pretty decent job. Alright, so I can see some color fringing towards the edges. Alright, but that's beyond the scope of this workshop. If you want to learn about masking and hair masking, I would highly recommend Deep McLean's channels and masking series on lynda.com or LinkedIn Learning. Alright, that is the go-to resource if you're a professional photographer and you want to learn about channels and masking out hair. Alright, that is one of the toughest thing to mask. Anyhow, so you have seen how it works on. Now I also have, with the mask selected, I also have in the properties panel access to the mask option, so I can play around with the feather, increase or decrease it. Alright, I can play around with the density of the mask. So I can use the refine edge command that is now renamed as selected mask. I can use color range, I can invert the mask if I want. Alright, you get the idea. So this is basically how you play around with the properties panel. Now another thing is properties panel, it works on text layers, it works on raster layers or pixel based layers. It also works at the document level. So let us look at the document level options available in the properties panel. And you can see we have canvas settings over here. I can change the mode of the image. I can change it from RGB to CMYK or any color mode of my choice. I can play around with the width and height of the canvas. So if I want to increase the canvas by, let's say, 100 pixels, I can go ahead and click plus 100 and plus 100. And you can see 100 pixels have been added to the width and height. Alright, so again you can change it from portrait to landscape mode over here, but the image may truncate, there may be some issues, so I'm not going to do that. Then again there are rulers and grids options, so if you want to have access to the rulers, go ahead and click the rulers option over here in the rulers and grids drop down menu in the panels. Properties panel. Then again, if you want to have a look at grades, go ahead and click grades. Alright, if you want to change the spacing between the grades or the color of the grades, go ahead and click this guy over here, show transparency and game mode settings. Alright, it would launch preferences section, preferences, and take you right away to transparency and game mode settings. So I'm just going to have large grid size, and instead of light, I'm going to select red as the color of my grade. And I'm going to click OK to commit the changes. Alright, so this is how you play around with the properties panel. Now, not to forget, there are some other options as well. So if I want, in the guide section, I can view the guides or hide them like so. I can lock the guides. So right now, if you see, if I am on the image, alright, so let me select the layer. And on the image, when in selection mode, I can select and accidentally move these guides. I don't want to do that. So in that case, what you need to do is go ahead and lock the guides. Alright, so you always have an option. I'm not going to select any layer over here, and I can always go ahead and lock these guides. So now I'm not able to select them or accidentally move them. Then again, you can have dashed guides if you want, or you can have solid lines as guides. Alright, so there are different options. You can view the smart guides. Alright, that is guides when you're moving the objects. You can see guides giving you some hints. Alright, these are basically when you're trying to align the elements of objects. Then again, we have access to some quick actions like image size. Ideally, I would be hitting Ctrl+Alt+I on my keyboard or going to the images panel over here and selecting image size from here. Then you can always crop the image, you can rotate the image, you can trim the image. Alright, these are some document level operations or commands that people use time and again. So some really fascinating changes being made to the properties panel. Alright, I can say that Adobe is going in absolutely right direction. Interesting times, because some 5 years back, masking out an image was quite a headache. Alright, you would take 15 to 20 minutes, sometimes even an hour for complicated selections. But now with Adobe Sensei and basically object selection, remove background, select subject, the life is much easy. Alright, so let's move on to the next feature now. Now another enhancement that's been made to Photoshop CC 2020 is the image warp tool. In fact, it's not even called image warp anymore, they call it the warp tool only. And those of you who've been using Photoshop for quite some time must be knowing it was part of the transform tool. Alright, so let me show you what new modifications or changes have been made, enhancements have been made to the warp tool. So first thing, let's go to the layers panel and select the Sydney layer. You will notice I have converted the text layer to the shape layer now. Let me just click Ctrl T on my keyboard, that would be Command T on Mac, to transform the Sydney layer over here. Now if I right click and from the context menu, if I select warp, first thing you would notice is we have 4 control points, alright, one at each corner. And with each control point, there are 2 Bezier curves as well to play around with the shape. Alright. Anyhow, earlier there used to be a grid which you can still access from the grid drop down menu. Now, in the earlier version of Photoshop, users were only confined to 3x3 grid. Alright, now you can use 4x4 grid, 5x5 grid. So there's that much more creative freedom to play around with the control points or the anchor points. Now I'm going to select custom, and from the custom grid drop down pop-up menu, I can always specify how many grids I want. So I can select 1 by 1 over here and hit enter, and I'm a free bird. Alright, so I like to have control. So I'm just going to hold down the Alt key on my keyboard and start dragging from here. That would be Option drag on Mac, and I can just go ahead and start placing the grids as per my requirement, my liking. Alright, so I'm just working very randomly over here, and you can see I have a custom grid now. Let me just go ahead and hit Ctrl Z a couple of times to undo these changes. Another thing you can do is just right click, and from the context menu, make sure you have a transform tool selected, and then from the right click context menu, you can select split warp horizontally, vertically, or crosswise. Alright, so these 3 options are also available over here in the options bar. So let's say if I select vertically, then I can drag, simply start dragging over here like so, hit Alt drag. Now this is just one. Alright, so if I hit Alt and start dragging, it would be a cross like this. But if I want only one, I would have to right click and select split vertically, and then select the insertion point at the position of my liking, like so. So if I want to do it horizontally, I can right click and choose split warp horizontally from here and position a grid over here. Likewise, let's do it horizontally, this time from options bar, and I'm going to position one over here. Now you can always play around with these control points. Alright, so I have, personally speaking, I have never been a big fan of this. Not exactly the right thing to say. Actually, I have never used warp too much in my designs. So, but talking about the use cases of the tool, you would ideally like to use it wherever you want to give a ripple effect, or a, let's say, a wind effect or a wave, alright, something like that. So you also have an option to choose multiple points at once. So hold down the shift key, start selecting these anchor points like so, and then you can always play around with the design. Alright, so just it will increase the size or decrease the size, alright, from inside out or outside in, like this. So that's it. I'm going to click the checkbox on the options bar to commit the changes. So this is how you play around with the warp tool. Now let me show it to you on another design. So I have a design of a Indian flag. We don't have the chakra in between, but this is just a custom design I have worked on. I'll hit Ctrl T on my keyboard, and again I'm going to select warp from here. So you can see other split options do not activate unless you select warp. Once I do that, then other options are also activated. So I'm going to select split warp vertically, and this is where I'm going to split it. And you can see I'm giving it a bit of a wind effect. So now I'm playing around with the Bezier curves like so. Alright, so this is basically how you play around with the tool. Now another option that you always have, and you always had in the earlier versions as well, was envelope distort. You still have that. So I'm not going to commit the changes. I can always hit Ctrl T, and then after selecting warp, I can go to the warp drop down menu and select one of the envelope distort shapes from here. Alright, so I can select arc, give it an arc shape. I can select flag. So where's the flag? Here it is. So you can see now we are giving it a flag effect. Alright, so this is the warp tool. With Photoshop CC 2020, presets have been completely reimagined. So your entire experience of using presets like gradients, shapes, styles, patterns is a whole lot new experience. Alright, you have different panels, dedicated panels for all these presets. You can see each preset by playing around with their size right within the panel itself before you actually use it on your artwork, or when you drag and drop it to the canvas or on your image. Alright, so you can rearrange the presets, you can better manage them, and let me just show you what I mean. Alright, so it's a cutting edge experience. So you can see I have patterns, gradients, shapes, styles, all the presets docked in this palette, and each preset within its panel, you can see they now have folders. Alright, so these are properly grouped, categorized folders, and I can see each preset within the preview of each preset within the panel itself. Alright, so for patterns, if I go to the flyout menu for the panel, by clicking this small three lines on the top right hand side of the panel, I can basically play around with the preview size. So right now I'm looking at large thumbnails. I can switch to small thumbnails. Alright, I can look at the text only. So typically I would like to stick to large thumbnails, and then I can always drag and drop these thumbnails on the canvas. Alright, likewise we have previews for different patterns, different categories of patterns. So we have a category for trees, for grass, we have a category for water. Alright, so let's say for example, if I go to layers, and in the masthead layer, let me just hide these styles. Alright, and for Sydney, you can see I have applied a lot of styles. Let me remove the pattern overlay from here, and maybe what I can do is I can just drag and drop a pattern. Let's stick to water, or should we go with trees? Okay, so I just want to make it look a little funky, so I'm just going to drag and drop it over here and see the change in real time. How cool is that? Alright, so now again, if I want, I can colorize this, I can play around with the color or add some new styles to the layer, but you got the idea, right? So just like patterns, we also have presets, previews for gradients. Again, we have different categories. We can expand these categories by clicking these 12 triangles over here. Alright, so we have categories for blues, for basics, different types of gradient families, color families of gradients. So we have a color family, a gradient family for purple. Alright, so just go on expanding these categories by playing around with these 12 triangles. And then again, if you want, you can always change the preview size over here. Alright, so I can switch to small size, or I can switch to large list. Then I would see it in a stacking order, in a list stacking order. And then again, I can also see a small preview of what the gradient is going to look like. So let's drag and drop this particular gradient over here. And you can see we have applied the gradient in real time. Alright, so likewise, we also have previews for shapes, and this is really something which is going to blow your mind. Alright, so you can have a look at shapes before you actually go on drag and dropping them. Alright, so let's say I want to have this shape on the canvas. Now what Photoshop will do is, not only will it drop the artwork, the shape on the canvas, it is also going to create an extra vector layer for you. So let's go and investigate the layers panel. And you can see the apple tree has been placed on a new and a dedicated apple tree 1 layer. Alright, it's a vector object. If I click check mark, let me just go ahead and increase the size first. So, oops. So the next feature we are going to cover is actually an enhancement again. Alright, it's more of a accessibility enhancement. You can navigate much more easily inside Photoshop CC 2020, and when I say navigation, we are talking specifically about the zoom functionality. So in Photoshop CC 2020, you can just alt click a layer and Photoshop will take you to the objects, to the elements, to the shapes, to the images on that particular layer and zoom them on the screen. Let me show you how that works. So over here, you can see we're back to the same image, and let's say I am focusing on Harbor Bridge, that is the masthead, and from there I want to move into the email icon over here. Alright, so let me just zoom in on Harbor Bridge. Now typically what would I do? I would hold down the control spacebar on my keyboard, that would be command spacebar on Mac, and I would zoom in on a particular layer. And now I would similar way, I would just zoom out, then again start zooming in on the region of interest like this. Alright, so a couple of clicks, couple of drags, and couple of modified keys there. Alright, now with the CC release, Photoshop has made it much more easy. So let me just zoom back in on Harbor Bridge, and let's say I want to zoom in on the email icon. So all I need to do now is hold down the Alt key on my keyboard, that would be Option on Mac, and I can click the layer and it will straight away bring the object or elements on the layer in focus and zoom them in for me. So similarly, let's say I want to zoom in on the web layer. I'll hold down the Alt key again, and now it zooms in the web icon for me. If I want to zoom in on the phone icon, I'll click the corresponding layer and it zooms in the phone icon. Now let's say I have a ship layer. So I'm just going to, where's the ship layer? Here it is. I'm going to hold down the Alt key, click the ship layer, and you can see it zooms back to the ship. I also have a rectangle over here, so which is a vector. So I'm going to hold the Alt key and click the rectangle, and it zooms in to the rectangle, which is again a vector element. Now again, one thing I would like to point out at this point, this zoom functionality that Photoshop has introduced is sort of a half-baked feature. Alright, it's an inconsistent experience at best. I hate to say that, but yes, it works on continuous tone images or raster graphics. It works on vector graphics, but it does not work on text layers. Alright, so if I just go to the text layer, let me just go ahead and expand the group, text layer group, and You can see in the footer region we have few text layers. I'll hold down the Alt key, click the email over here, and rather than zooming in, it fits the window on the screen. Alright, that's what it's doing at the best. So rather than zooming in on any of these text layers, it has just fitted the window in the screen for me. Alright, so the window is 100% in view now. That's it. Likewise, let me just go to the masthead, and if I hold down the Alt key, now in the masthead we don't have the text layers. These have been converted to shape, to vector. So if I hold down the Alt key and click, it should work. And yes, you can see it zooms in the harbor bridge, which is now a vector. You can see that because we have access to the control points or anchor points, right? So good feature, nice accessibility functionality there. Much easier to navigate around the workspace, but then again works on raster layers, works on vector layers, but does not work on text layers. Alright, moving over to the next feature. Hello friends, if you really like this segment, then please don't forget to share, comment, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, you can click the bell icon right below this video to be notified about our new tutorials, best practices, tips and tricks as and when we share them. And yes, don't forget to follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest on the links provided below this video. Thank you.